Welcome to Paperwave, where we dive deep into groundbreaking research. Today, we have the pleasure of hosting Dr. Suzuki, who will discuss his fascinating work on extended reality and the experience of presence. Dr. Suzuki, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to share my research with your listeners.
Dr. Suzuki, let's start with an overview of your research. What exactly is extended reality, often abbreviated as XR, and why is it significant?
Extended reality, or XR, is an umbrella term that includes virtual reality, VR, augmented reality, AR, and mixed reality, MR. These technologies create immersive simulations that blend the physical and virtual worlds. Our goal in studying XR is to understand how these environments affect our sense of presence, or the feeling of being there in the virtual world.
So XR encompasses VR, AR, and MR, creating immersive experiences that blend real and virtual worlds. That sounds both complex and fascinating. Could you summarize the key points of your paper for our audience?
Certainly. Our paper explores how XR can be used to study the experience of presence. We look at the factors that influence this sense of presence, how it can be measured, and potential applications. We also discuss two experiments that assess sensory-motor contingencies and their impact on the sense of objecthood, or the feeling that objects in the virtual environment are real.
Thank you for that summary. For those new to this field, why is it important to study presence in XR?
Studying presence is crucial because it can enhance the effectiveness of XR applications in areas like education, therapy, and training. A strong sense of presence can make virtual environments more engaging and convincing, which can improve learning outcomes, therapeutic interventions, and skill acquisition.
That makes a lot of sense. A strong sense of presence can truly transform the impact of XR applications. Can you give us a brief history of XR technologies and key milestones in their development?
XR technologies have evolved significantly over the past few decades. VR and AR started gaining attention in the 1960s and 70s, but it wasn't until the 1990s and early 2000s that they reached wider audiences thanks to advancements in computing power. More recent developments, like the introduction of high-quality head-mounted displays, HMDs, and motion capture systems, have further advanced the field and opened up new research possibilities.
It's intriguing to see how XR has evolved over the years. For our listeners, can you explain some key terms they'll hear throughout this episode, such as VR, AR, and SR?
Of course. Virtual reality, VR, immerses users in a completely virtual environment. Augmented reality, AR, overlays virtual elements onto the real world. A newer term, substitutional reality, SR, switches between real-world and pre-recorded views to create highly realistic experiences. Understanding these terms will help listeners grasp the concepts we'll discuss.
Welcome back to Paperwave. We are here with Dr. Suzuki to delve deeper into his research on XR and presence. Dr. Suzuki, let's start with the basics. How do you define presence in the context of extended reality?
Presence in XR is defined as the subjective sense of reality within a virtual environment. It's the feeling of being physically located in the virtual space, rather than where one's body is actually situated in the real world.
So presence is about feeling like you're actually there in the virtual environment. How does this sense of reality come about? What are the key factors at play?
There are several factors influencing the sense of presence. These include sensory-motor coupling, immersion, and embodiment. Sensory-motor coupling refers to the alignment between a user's actions and the system's responses. Immersion relates to the sensory and perceptual fidelity of the XR environment. Embodiment involves the sense of owning and controlling a virtual body within that space.
That's a lot to consider. Can you explain how XR enhances the sense of presence?
XR enhances presence by providing high-fidelity sensory inputs, realistic sensor-motor interaction, and a strong sense of embodiment. For instance, when the visual and auditory cues are realistic and aligned with users' actions, their brain accepts the virtual environment as real. Incorporating tactile and haptic feedback can further enhance this sense of presence by making interactions feel more tangible.
Could you share some technological and psychological aspects that influence this sense of presence?
Technologically, the quality of graphics, frame rate, and multisensory feedback significantly impact presence. Psychologically, Factors like individual differences in immersion capability and prior virtual experience play a role. Sensory-motor contingencies, which include our anticipations of sensory signals during movement, are critical. When these expectations are met accurately in XR, presence is heightened.
It's fascinating how intertwined our sensory expectations and technology are in creating this experience. Can we dive deeper into the concept of sensory-motor coupling you mentioned?
Sure. Sensoromotor coupling refers to the interaction loop between a user's actions and the resulting sensory feedback from the system. For example, when you move a virtual object using a controller, the visual feedback on screen should be perfectly synchronized with your movements. This accurate linkage is crucial for maintaining a sense of presence.
How does embodiment factor into the equation of presence?
Embodiment in XR means experiencing a virtual body as if it were one's own. This is achieved through visual, tactile, and proprioceptive feedback that corresponds to the movements and actions of the user in the virtual world. For instance, if what you see and feel matches your own actions in XR, your brain starts treating the virtual body as an extension of your own, thereby enhancing the sense of presence.
Welcome back to Paperwave. We are here with Dr. Keisuke Suzuki, moving on to the intriguing subject of measuring presence in XR environments. Dr. Suzuki, can you give us an overview of the methods used to measure presence?
Certainly. Measuring presence involves subjective, behavioral, and physiological methods. Subjective measures often include questionnaires and self-reports, which are straightforward but can be influenced by demand characteristics. Behavioral measures look at a person's actions within the virtual environment, while physiological measures, like heart rate and skin conductance, provide objective data on the user's experience.
Let's start with the subjective measures. How effective are questionnaires and self-reports in capturing the sense of presence?
Questionnaires and self-reports are widely used due to their simplicity and ease of implementation. However, they come with drawbacks. The results can vary based on prior information given to participants and are susceptible to demand characteristics, where participants might respond based on what they think the researchers are looking for.
That's an important caveat. Moving on to behavioral measures, could you explain how task performance and interactions are used to assess presence?
Behavioral measures are based on the idea that if users behave in a virtual environment as they would in the real world, they are experiencing presence. For example, if a participant ducks when a virtual object appears to be falling towards them, it indicates a high level of presence. These measures can be more reliable as they correlate with actual behavior, reducing the influence of subjective biases.
Interesting. And what about physiological measures like heart rate and skin conductance?
Physiological measures provide objective data by monitoring the body's automatic responses to virtual stimuli. For instance, increased heart rate or changes in skin conductance in response to stressful situations in a virtual environment can be strong indicators of presence. However, these too are not entirely free from bias, as they can be influenced by factors like imaginative suggestion.
What are the main challenges you face when measuring presence?
One major challenge is managing demand characteristics, which can skew both subjective and physiological measures. It's also difficult to ensure that the measures are capturing the true sense of presence and not other overlapping psychological states. Accurate measurement is crucial, as it helps us refine XR technologies and their applications.
Given these challenges, could you share some examples from studies that measure presence effectively?
Certainly. Some effective studies use a combination of the methods mentioned. For example, experiments measuring physiological responses like heart rate and skin conductance during virtual reality exposure to stress-inducing scenarios, coupled with behavioral assessments such as task performance and subjective questionnaires, provide a comprehensive view of presence. Combining multiple methods helps mitigate the limitations of each and provides more robust insights.
Welcome back. We are here with Dr. Keisuke Suzuki to explore the intriguing topic of disorders of presence in clinical conditions. Dr. Suzuki, could you begin by introducing us to the concept of disorders of presence?
Certainly. Disorders of presence occur when an individual's sense of reality and presence within the environment is disrupted. A common example is depersonalization derealization disorder, or DPDR, where individuals experience a profound sense of detachment from their surroundings or even their own body.
That's quite fascinating. Can you explain DPDR in more detail? What are its clinical symptoms?
DPDR is a dissociative disorder where patients report persistent or recurrent feelings of being detached from their own body or mental processes. They might feel like an outside observer of their own life, depersonalization, or as if their surroundings are unreal, derealization. This is often accompanied by emotional numbness and a diminished sense of reality.
So patients with DPDR not only feel detached from reality, but also experience a reduction in emotional responses. How does DPDR impact their sense of presence?
Individuals with DPDR typically have normal cognitive and perceptual capabilities, which suggests that their condition is linked to a separation between specific perceptual content and the general experience of presence. This means their sense of presence is weakened or attenuated, causing them to perceive their environment as less real.
It's intriguing how perception and presence can diverge. Are there other clinical conditions that affect the sense of presence?
Yes, other conditions such as schizophrenia and certain neurodegenerative diseases also involve altered experiences of presence. For example, hallucinations in these conditions can be considered as percepts without corresponding external stimuli, which can impact the individual's sense of reality.
You mentioned emotional numbness in DPDR. What neurocognitive mechanisms are thought to underlie this disorder?
There's evidence suggesting that DPDR may result from an aberrant integration of autonomic signals, which are crucial for generating emotional responses. Reduced autonomic reactions to aversive stimuli in DPDR support the idea that presence might be an effective experience, influencing how real the world feels to an individual.
Thank you for that detailed explanation. Are there any potential treatments or interventions for DPDR?
Treatment options for DPDR include psychotherapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, and medications such as antidepressants and anxiolytics. More research is needed to develop targeted interventions that address the specific neurocognitive mechanisms underlying DPDR.
Welcome back to Paperwave. We are here with Dr. Keisuke Suzuki, exploring his groundbreaking research. Dr. Suzuki, let's dive into the concept of perceptual presence. How would you define this term?
Perceptual presence refers to the vivid perceptual experience and the quality of objects as really existing in our perceptual field. Essentially, it is the subjective sense that we are encountering real, three-dimensional objects.
That's fascinating. I understand that the idea of objecthood is central to perceptual presence. Can you explain what objecthood means in this context?
Objecthood is the perception that an object has a volumetric, three-dimensional existence. For instance, when you see a coffee cup, you perceive it as a real entity with a back and sides, even if you can only see the front. This perception is informed by our experience and anticipatory knowledge of how objects behave when we interact with them.
So objecthood is about our brain's understanding and expectation of an object as a whole, rather than just what we can see. What role do sensory-motor contingencies play in this experience?
Sensory-motor contingencies refer to the regular, predictable changes in sensory input resulting from specific actions. Mastery of these contingencies means having an implicit knowledge of how our actions will affect sensory input. This mastery underlies our ability to perceive objects as real and fully three-dimensional.
Could you provide some examples of perceptual presence in our daily lives?
Certainly. Perceptual presence is experienced in everyday actions, such as reaching out to grab a coffee cup and feeling its weight, or navigating around furniture in a room. These experiences are grounded in our sensory-motor knowledge of how objects behave when we interact with them.
That's very relatable. Can you tell us about the experiments you've conducted on perceptual presence?
One of our experiments used XR technology to study sensor-motor contingencies. Participants manipulated a virtual object, and we measured their perceptual experience. We found that realistic sensor-motor contingencies enhanced the sense of object presence, making the virtual object feel more real.
That's quite a finding. How does this concept connect to Gibson's theory of affordances?
Gibson's theory of affordances suggests that objects offer opportunities for action based on their properties. For example, a chair affords sitting. Our mastery of sensoromotor contingencies aligns with these affordances, reinforcing our perception of objects as real and actionable. This connection between affordances and perceptual presence helps us understand how we interact seamlessly with our environment.
This knowledge is truly enriching for XR research. Thank you, Dr. Suzuki, for these insights into perceptual presence and its implications. Welcome back to Paperwave. We are here with Dr. Keisuke Suzuki to discuss the intriguing methodologies used to measure perceptual presence in XR. Dr. Suzuki, could you introduce us to the concept of binocular suppression?
Certainly. Binocular suppression involves presenting different images to each eye. This can lead to a phenomenon where the brain suppresses one of the images in favor of the other. A well-known method related to this is continuous flash suppression, CFS.
What exactly is continuous flash suppression, CFS?
CFS is a technique where a rapidly changing sequence of high-contrast patterns is presented to one eye, while a static image is shown to the other eye. The dynamic patterns suppress the perception of the static image, delaying its entry into awareness. This delay, often measured as breakthrough time, can reveal a lot about unconscious visual processing and perceptual presence.
How is CFS used in XR research to measure perceptual presence?
In our research, we use CFS to study how sensory-motor coupling influences perceptual presence. By having participants interact with virtual objects whose visibility is suppressed by CFS, we can measure the time it takes for these objects to become perceptually dominant. This setup helps us understand the role of sensory-motor contingencies in enhancing the sense of objecthood or perceptual presence.
Can you share some examples of experiments using CFS in your studies?
Certainly. In one experiment, participants manipulated virtual 3D objects while their visibility was suppressed by CFS. We found that objects directly coupled to the participants' actions broke through to awareness more quickly than those that didn't move or whose movements were replayed from earlier trials. This suggests that valid sensorimotor contingencies enhance the perceptual presence of virtual objects.
That's very enlightening. What were the key findings from these CFS studies?
The key finding is that realistic sensorimotor interactions significantly reduce suppression times, enhancing the perceptual presence of virtual objects. This supports the idea that mastering sensorimotor contingencies is critical for the sense of reality in virtual environments.
It's fascinating how such experiments can provide deeper insights. Are there any challenges or limitations with using CFS?
While CFS is a powerful tool, it has limitations. Controlling for individual differences in perceptual and motor skills is challenging, and the artificial nature of the suppression paradigm might not perfectly replicate real-world conditions. Additionally, CFS primarily provides indirect measures of unconscious processing, so it's essential to corroborate findings with other methods.
Welcome back to Paperwave. We are discussing with Dr. Keisuke Suzuki the intriguing topic of when presence in virtual reality isn't enough. Dr. Suzuki, could you start by introducing us to the limitations of VR?
Certainly. One of the main limitations of VR is that while it can create a compelling sense of presence, it often falls short of making users believe that what they are experiencing is actually real. This distinction between feeling and believing is crucial for a more nuanced understanding of presence.
That distinction is very interesting. You also discussed the concept of veridicality in your work. Could you elaborate on that?
Veridicality refers to the correspondence between our perceptual experiences and reality. In the context of XR, we can think of different layers of veridicality. Perceptual, where the content seems real; doxastic, where we believe the content is real; and objective, where the content actually corresponds to reality. These layers help explain the dissociation between feeling present and believing in the reality of what is experienced in VR environments.
So veridicality involves multiple layers that influence our perception and belief. Could you provide examples of this dissociation between feeling and believing?
Sure. Consider someone standing on a virtual ledge in a VR simulation. They might feel scared and react as if they are on a real ledge, but they still cognitively know they are safe. This illustrates a strong sense of presence, but a weak doxastic veridicality because the individual does not believe the ledge is real. Further, In cases like lucid dreaming, individuals know they are dreaming despite vivid and immersive experiences that feel real.
A captivating example. Now, you mentioned substitutional reality as an interesting alternative. What exactly is SR?
Substitutional reality, SR, is a technique that uses a head-mounted display, HMD, equipped with a camera. SR switches between live video feeds and pre-recorded 360-degree videos seamlessly. The goal is to manipulate the participants' belief that what they are experiencing is real, even when it is not live. This capability helps address the limitations of traditional VR by enhancing doxastic veridicality.
How does SR compare with VR in terms of potential applications?
SR can be highly valuable in scenarios where belief in the reality of the experience is crucial. This includes therapeutic applications, training simulations, and even studies on memory distortions and confabulations. The richer, more believable experiences SR offers can lead to more effective outcomes in these areas compared to traditional VR.
It seems SR has much promise. What are some challenges and future directions for SR?
One of the main challenges of SR is ensuring high levels of sensory fidelity and realism in pre-recorded videos. There are also ethical considerations around manipulating participants' beliefs. Future research will need to focus on enhancing interactivity, integrating additional sensory inputs, and exploring applications in clinical settings.
Thank you, Dr. Suzuki, for this insightful discussion on the complexities and advancements in XR technologies. Welcome back to Paperwave. We're here with Dr. Keisuke Suzuki to discuss the exciting possibilities of substitutional reality, or SR, as an innovative XR framework. Dr. Suzuki, could you provide a detailed explanation of what SR entails?
Of course. Substitutional reality, SR, is a system that utilizes a head-mounted display, HMD, with a live camera feed to seamlessly switch between a real-time view and pre-recorded 360-degree videos. This allows participants to believe that what they are experiencing is happening in real time, even when it is a pre-recorded and potentially manipulated scenario.
That sounds intriguing. How exactly are SR experiments conducted?
In our SR experiments, participants wear an HMD equipped with the SR system. They are exposed to various scenarios that seamlessly transition between live and pre-recorded content. For instance, we might record participants entering a room and later switch the display to this pre-recorded scene without their awareness. This setup allows us to study how quickly and effectively participants can distinguish real-time events from pre-recorded ones.
This methodology sounds like it could be applied in many interesting ways. Could you give us some examples of SR applications?
Certainly. One significant application is in clinical research, studying phenomena like déjà vu and confabulations. By introducing subtle changes to the pre-recorded scene, we can observe how participants react and whether they detect discrepancies. This can provide insights into memory distortions and the construction of reality. Another application is in training simulations, where SR can create highly realistic scenarios for skill acquisition and decision-making.
What would you say are the main advantages of using SR over traditional VR?
SR offers higher doxastic veridicality, meaning it can make participants truly believe that the scenario is real, not just feel like it's real. This can lead to more authentic behaviors and responses in experiments. Additionally, SR can provide richer contextual and environmental details by using real-world footage, which is often more convincing than entirely computer-generated environments.
That makes a lot of sense. Are there any challenges or limitations to SR that researchers should be aware of?
Yes, there are several challenges. One major limitation is the current level of interaction in SR environments, which is generally limited to head and eye movements. Future technological advancements may enable more complex interactions. Another challenge is ensuring the seamless integration of live and pre-recorded footage to avoid breaking the sense of reality. Ethical considerations also come into play, particularly when manipulating participants' beliefs about what is real.
Ethical considerations are certainly important. What potential does SR hold for clinical settings?
In clinical settings, SR could be used for therapeutic purposes, such as exposure therapy for anxiety disorders, by creating safe yet convincing environments. It also holds promise for cognitive rehabilitation, helping patients retrain attention and memory by engaging in realistic yet controlled scenarios. The ability to simulate real-life situations can make interventions more relevant and effective.
Thank you for this enlightening discussion, Dr. Suzuki. Your work with SR offers a promising glimpse into the future of XR research and its applications. Welcome back to Paperwave. We are joined by Dr. Keisuke Suzuki for the concluding segment of our discussion on his research. Dr. Suzuki, could you start us off with a summary of the key findings from your study?
Certainly. Our research highlights the role of extended reality, XR technologies, particularly VR and SR, in studying the experience of presence. We demonstrated how sensor-motor coupling enhances perceptual presence. And we also explored new dimensions, such as doxastic veridicality, which is the belief in the reality of the experience.
Thank you for that summary. How do these findings contribute to the existing literature on XR and presence?
Our findings contribute by bridging the gap between traditional measures of presence and more nuanced aspects like doxastic veridicality. This has allowed us to better understand the complex layers of reality perception in XR environments, thereby adding depth to the current literature.
What practical implications do these findings have for XR technologies?
Practically, our research suggests that enhancing sensor-motor couplings and incorporating doxastic elements can create more immersive and believable XR experiences. This has significant applications in fields like virtual training, therapy, and beyond.
That's promising. What about the implications for clinical research?
In clinical research, SR can be used to study conditions like DPDR and hallucinations by manipulating patients' belief in the reality of their experiences. This allows us to explore new therapeutic interventions and understand underlying neurocognitive mechanisms more deeply.
Were there any limitations in your study that you feel are important to highlight?
Yes, one limitation is the potential for demand characteristics to influence results. Although we attempted to control for these, they remain a significant consideration. Additionally, current SR technology primarily supports head and eye movements, limiting interactivity.
What suggestions do you have for future research in this area?
Future research should focus on improving the interactivity of SR, developing more sophisticated measures to capture the different layers of presence, and exploring the ethical implications of manipulating reality beliefs. Further studies should also investigate the use of multi-sensory feedback to enhance the XR experience.
Thank you, Dr. Suzuki, for your thorough insights. As we wrap up, do you have any final thoughts on the importance of studying presence?
Understanding presence in XR is crucial for advancing both technology and psychological research. It allows us to create more effective and immersive virtual environments with broad applications from entertainment to clinical therapy. I'm grateful to my co-authors and the institutions that supported our research.